Right, morning everybody. My name's Sarah Chambers. I'm a senior manager at Cooper Parry, and I'm just going to spend 10 to 15 minutes with you this morning just to talk through my three-step process to getting ready for year-end and audit and making sure that you have a really smooth audit process when it comes around in the autumn term. So I'm a senior manager at Cooper Parry, and I work in a not-for-profit team just with academies. I used to be a school business manager, and these days I work with lots of academies doing all sorts of non-statutory work, so internal assurance, helping people with budgeting, forecasting, due diligence, all sorts of different things. But I also work with a lot of auditors, so I've got a bit of insight into what they're looking for when they come to do your audit, and how to keep them sweet, really. So I've got a kind of 3-point plan. This is what I used to do when I was working as a business manager. So first of all, scrub your income and expenditure. Secondly, check your balance sheet. And thirdly, start gathering information. And I'd recommend that you make a start on those three things really as soon as you possibly can. Summer holidays, when there's a few less staff in school, can be a really good time to start on this. So let's look at those three different areas. So scrub your income and expenditure. What do I mean by that? Really, have a look through in quite a lot of detail at what's been booked to your income codes and your expenditure codes. You could do that by running a transaction report from your software, financial software. And if you're doing budget monitoring monthly, as you have to do for the handbook, you'll probably be all over this anyway. But really it's a case of looking at your income, making sure that it's complete, or income and expenditure, making sure that it's complete and accurate. So for income and expenditure, where you have like a monthly outgoing or incoming, you can check that you've got enough of those amounts coming through into your accounts. So here we are at the end, middle of July, so you might be looking at your June account, so you know that you should have 10 lots of income, whether it's monthly income, and then where it's income that's periodic, making sure that that's all accounted for. It's also a good idea to think about income where you might have to invoice. So that's something that can sometimes get missed if you've got children, say, from other local authorities or SEN children, where you have to invoice other schools or other local authorities, just to make sure that your income is up to date and complete and is going to be fully invoiced for the year. And then looking at expenditure, it's a case of going through and making sure that the codes that things have been booked to kind of make sense and are in the right place. And as I say, if you've done your budget monitoring, you're probably going to be pretty on top of that anyway, but now is a good time to just double check it. And the other thing I would say is also have a think about fund accounting. So if you've got restricted income or unrestricted income and expenditure, just making sure that that income and expenditure has been booked to the right fund account, because that's something that your auditors are going to be having a look at when they come in. So that's scrubbing income and expenditure. So the second step would be to have a look at your balance sheet. Now, there's often a lot of focus in academies on income and expenditure, but a little bit less focus sometimes on balance sheets. And this is sometimes a place where things can crop up that throw you out at the year end, really. So my first top tip would be to have a look at your year end journals that you had from your accountants, if you had any, and make sure that they've all been booked and reflected in your system, and that you've rolled your system forward if that's something that you need to do as part of your kind of year-end process. And then having done that you've checked that the opening balances all tie back to your stat accounts. That can be a little bit tricky sometimes, reconciling it back. So I'd suggest that if you need any help doing that, get in touch with your accountants and auditors and ask them to give you a hand and just give you a bit of comfort that your opening position is correct. And I'm sure they'll appreciate that, because they'll be looking at that too. And then it's a case of going through the balance sheet really and making sure that all the figures in there kind of stack up and that you understand what's going on. So in terms of fixed assets, it's a case of making sure it agrees back to your fixed asset register if you have one. Just a point of note is that from next year, the handbook states that you must have a fixed asset register, and it's really good practice to have one anyway. So making sure that if you're accounting for additions in year, that you've got those booked in the right place and that kind of thing, and that you know what they are. And if you're not accounting for them in year, some academies just book them as year-end adjustments, that you kind of know what your capital expenditure is and depreciation and what you need to book at the year end. And then you need to look at things like your bank balances. I'm sure you'll all be doing bank recs on at least a monthly basis, but it's making sure that all the bank accounts are reconciled. It's a really good way to support the completeness of your income and expenditure that we were just talking about. Because if your system agrees back to your bank rec, to your bank statement, eventually you know that you've got everything that's gone through the bank, so that's a good start. And then have a look at the debtors and the creditors. So your sales ledger, make sure that it's up to date, that the debtors that are on there, so this is where you're selling goods or services to maybe other schools or local authorities, that those balances are correct, that where we think we've had income from other third parties, that's been booked to their accounts, and the balances that are in the debtors ledger make sense. It's also a good point to maybe have a look at recoverability. So if you have any old debts at this point in the year, to make a start on really chasing those, and to have a think if there are any that you think you're not going to have to be able to recover and maybe have to provide against. Same with creditors really, so that's where you're buying goods and services from suppliers usually, but it might be from other schools. Have a look through your purchase ledger and just make sure that those balances look right, that they're kind of neat and tidy really, that you haven't got very old balances that need to be written off, and that where you've paid suppliers, that's been reflected in your purchase ledger. The other big balance on the balance sheet for academies is often VAT. So it's a case of having a look at your VAT debtor, it's usually a debtor balance, and making sure that the balance that is sitting there is basically anything that you've claimed but not received yet from HMRC, plus whatever's kind of current and hasn't yet been claimed. If there's a difference, or a bigger amount, then you need to have a bit of a look into that and make sure that the balance that's sitting in the balance sheet is valid. And then finally, the other big one for academies is payroll control accounts. So your payroll control accounts basically should just have for HMRC a month of tax and NI that you're going to pay over to HMRC mid-month, and same for TPS and LGPS pension contributions, because usually you pay those every month, kind of mid-month. And in terms of the net wages and salaries, payroll control account, at the end of the month, once you've paid the salaries, you would expect that to be a nil balance. So if you've got any kind of funny looking balances in any of those, they'll need a bit of investigation and tidying up, I guess, if the auditors arrive in autumn term. And once you've done that, then you can feel fairly satisfied that there's nothing sitting in your balance sheet that's going to give you a nasty surprise at the year end. But the other thing I didn't mention there is of course accrued and deferred income and accruals and prepayments on the expenditure side. So it's also worth having a quick look at those and making sure that they're kind of up to date and at the right kind of level, that you understand what that balance represents. Because if you have significant amounts of accruals or deferrals that need to be released or accrued, that can have an impact on your end of year position. So really what you're trying to do is get to the point where you kind of know where you're going to end the year, and that there's not going to be a lot of changes from that when the auditors come in. So that was thinking about your balance sheet and just having a look through the balance sheet and kind of making sure it all stacks up. So the last thing really is I really liked to use the summer for and to get ahead was to start gathering information ahead of the audit at this point. So most audit firms at this point in the year will have already talked to their clients and maybe had some planning meetings and started to ask, tell you the kind of information that they're going to be looking for. But really it's not rocket science. All audit firms are kind of looking for the same thing. So it will be, they'll want your trial balance and they'll want some evidence to support those figures in your trial balance. And they'll also be looking, because we're talking about academies and the specificities of the academy sector, there's also the regularity issues. So trying to support the regularity statement in the accounts. So really what I would recommend and what I always used to do was make up a kind of electronic folder with all the different areas that my auditors had asked me for. So I'd have an income section with GAG and all the remittance advices for GAG and any other grants that I'd received in the year. Same on capital grants. It's really useful to have as a folder or information section on the capital income that you've had and the expenditure against that. Talking about grants, obviously a lot of people have been impacted by COVID, so if you've made any claims for the exceptional funding that's been available under COVID, it'd be a good idea to have that summary of that information available for your auditors. And similarly, if there's been any arrangements that you've made with suppliers under any of the public procurement notices, that would be a useful bit of information probably to have, and I'll ask you about that. And then thinking on the expenditure side, they're probably going to ask you for payroll information. So you need to have that information available in some format to share with them. But also think about if you've had any large purchases, so anything where you've gone out to tender or had to get 3 quotes in, that's a useful kind of information to start pulling together at this stage. Other things to think about are new leases, if you've got any changes to any arrangements such as that. And also, again, we're talking about accruals and prepayments. If you've got any income or expenditure that kind of spans the year end, maybe you receive it on a final or pay it on a financial year basis, but you receive it you're accounting for it on an academic year basis, then it's useful to start gathering that information to kind of pull together your accruals and prepayment schedules. Then lastly, the thing to consider really is kind of the accounts really, and the stat accounts and the disclosure notes for those stat accounts. So there's quite a lot of information that you'll need in terms of things like staffing levels and salary costs for high earners, and also the accounts return that's due later in the year. There's also staffing information required for that. So I personally always used to try and use the sort of slightly less frenetic period over the summer to try and start gathering some of that information. And my last top tip would be to try to get your accounting officer and chair of trustees to think about the trustees report at this point, because actually most of the trustees report can be written at this point over the summer. And so if you come back in September with a really good draft of trustees report, that's really helpful and really helps you to get ahead. So that's my 3 top tips. So scrub your income and expenditure, review your balance sheet, and then make a start on gathering information for your auditors. We use Teams, which works really well for sharing information with our clients, and other audit firms use different methods. But if you can get some kind of electronic folder that you can hand over to them on day one, and then hopefully they'll go away and keep you quiet and let you get on with the day job. how it would be great if it could go like that, wouldn't it? So I hope that's helpful. As I said, my job is very much involved with supporting academies on anything that's kind of finance and governance. So if there's anything that you're not clear on or that you would like to chat to me about, please get in touch. You can get hold of me through the Cooper Parry website. Alternatively, I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm always very happy to connect with people and share ideas and experience. So please do get in touch. I hope that's helped, and look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.